So that's how my eczema went away. It took 30 days for it to go away. During that period of time, I no longer scratched, but I had to remind myself of the connection because the hand and the brain were involved. So instead of actually scratching, what I would do would be to take the fingertips and tap lightly on the area once or twice whenever there was a little twinge of the thing trying to push back. This way I did not have to go into the meditative state, relocate that area, and push the thing off again, if you will. Instead, what I did was to be able to stay in a conscious state and remind myself. It was sort of in a way of thinking about it, sort of a post-hypnotic suggestion kind of a deal, a trigger, a response that I'd built in, such that I could just do this in a waking state. And over the next 30 days, the eczema just simply stopped as the skin template rebuilt itself. Bearing in mind that your skin replaces itself constantly. You're constantly shedding bits of skin, and look at it, there's a huge industry involved in exfoliating women. And men now, I guess, too. So this is something that occurs constantly. Well, it's because your skin is replacing itself constantly at the template level, because of all these energetic things where it's really your contact with reality, and so you're going to wear off all of these little energetic nubs. They become less useful as soon as they're used at an energetic level, at a bioprocess level. So anyway, that's how I did the eczema cure. Now, I've done a couple of other things internally with meditation since then. Nothing as dramatic as that. Basically because I have been too busy doing other things. And my next real goal, I'm going to try doing it. I don't have much of an attachment to ever achieving it, but I'm going to try and grow a couple of new teeth. Let's see how that goes. Not that I'm favoring the teething process. I don't think I remember it, but I have the horror of remembering it. So anyway, though, but still, it'd be nice to have them. And it may be possible. It may be possible you can get into the template and do this. I have heard of people that are sadhus that sit out in the wilderness and munch on grass and twigs and rocks and stuff in India, and indeed are able to regrow teeth. But that's the self-healing. Now, if you're a meditator, you'll note a couple of things. That it was an issue of the shift of consciousness. I can shift consciousness to a point where there are no words. The linguistic center is shut off, and this was not that particular point, but it was very close to it, and it was slightly forward of it in that meditative sense. It was up from it, and it was to the right. And that apparently is the area in which the eye-hand-brain connection for the eczema had been triggered, had been altered within my energetic template. Whatever was the altering process, I cannot say. Whether it was that initial chemical scarring, whether it was a bacterial infection thereafter, whether it was some other kind of a condition, viral, or whether it was an energetic parasite, I'm just not able to say what the issue was. But the way in which it was repelled was by shoving it off. Now, since then, I have done some work, as I was saying, on other things. One of them is the arthritis. The arthritis turned out to be something entirely different. It actually is an energetic parasite, a being that is not of my own energetic template, that has attached itself to various parts of my template. I can see it in a meditative process. At its core, in each and every one of these areas is a dark, small, triangular area surrounded by, let's just say, yellow, more or less a yellow amorphous mass, an amoeba-like mass. And the arthritis, the kind that I have where your joints pop and they just fill with nitrous oxide and you got to get rid of the pressure and stuff, but you don't have the grinding of the joint linings together. This is apparently related to these small triangular bits that I've found in various locations when meditating, and the locations correspond to the actual joints that are affected. I was able to push some of these off, and they were difficult to remove. I've removed them from some of the larger joints, and they're now mainly concentrated in some of the smaller joint areas, from which they're extremely intractable. And one thing that I have noticed about these things is that they are an energetic parasite in the sense that they attach themselves and apparently take our energy, and they take it through the black triangle area into some other level of frequency that I'm not able to perceive beyond that, and that's how they subsist. And the manifestation of it in this reality is this rather painful arthritic condition. So, but it's controllable. I mean, I got it out of my shoulders, I've gotten it out of my knees and my ankles and so on, and it's mainly limited to these smaller joints, and I'm working on methods for that. If I ever discover anything that's worth reporting, I'll go ahead and let you know about that. If you've done this before in meditative process and know about that, let me know. I've been using the skinar on it, and that was actually what aided me in getting the little buggers corralled and off of the bigger joints. And the skinar is a device built by the Russians. It's SCENAR-COS MODIC. It's a skinar cosmodique. It's an energy healing device. They cost as much as a small car. And they're well worth it. Everybody that ever gets one of them, you swear you're never going to leave them. And I know where mine is every hour of the day, let me tell you. They give them away to the astronauts in the Russian space program to heal themselves. I've never used it on things like headaches or sinuses. I suppose I could. I've used it on all of the physical joint damage and that kind of thing that I force myself through with all of the weird stuff I do. The martial arts and building boats and all of this, it's hard on your body. But this device is quite good at repairing. If you ever need this to use or explore these, there are actually people now in the U.S., I guess, that can give a couple of hours treatment. They really know what they're doing, so you don't need to own the device. And in many cases, it's probably better to go to somebody who's been trained. When you get them from the Russian factory, they come with huge instruction manual in their DVD, and then several DVDs of treatment modalities for different kinds of things. The skinar cosmodique can be used to heal broken bones, for instance. Take broken bone healing time down to 10 and 12 days. You don't even need a cast if you do it correctly. And we're talking very severe fractures. So it's quite a remarkable approach to healing. And to a certain extent, I'm sure it's best left in the hands of somebody who's had it and used it on many different patients and can evaluate you ahead of time. Because part of my problem, of course, is figuring out how to best use it on my body type. But it is very useful if you ever get a chance to, or ever have a need for it. If you can locate somebody near you that can do that level of treatment, it can help out. Real quick, something to advise people about. We've got this big cold thing moving down to all you southerners. You may not be aware of this, but if we do get a collapse of the polar vortex and we get some of these extreme levels of cold. Now, bear in mind, it's so cold it froze the ocean off the coast of China and trapped lots of boats in the frozen salt water. And it's hard to freeze salt water. Anyway, those levels of cold, it can get so cold that it will actually damage the cilia, the little hairs in your lungs that move all the pollution and crud back out for you to cough it out. And so you need to take protection if it gets down to where they're talking about wind chills and so forth below freezing. At some point, your particular body will start to actually have these little cilia break. These little hairs can become so cold and that they become rigid, and you cough and you damage them. And they don't recover that quickly or that easily. They, like their skin, they get rebuilt, but not as rapidly. So one thing you can do, of course, is to make sure you're breathing through something, a scarf or a mask or something, so that you have a layer of warm air that protects them in a sort of like a little airlock. It's likely to get that cold. In China, they've had a lot of people in southern China regions that were unaware of that the cold was going to be that severe, and actually have suffered lung damage as a result. So just something in a way of a heads up. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about here was the global coastal event, because there's a misunderstanding in terms of the language here. Our language is very ambiguous. It's not as precise as either Latin or Sanskrit. and our root languages actually, but we've degraded over time, and we've lost a lot of the nuance that is provided by precision. So the global coastal event, as we've described it here, I've made all kinds of attempts to be very clear that this is not a ubiquitous phenomenon in terms of how it will be experienced everywhere. Obviously, Australia from the farsight.org and parts of Africa are going to get really hammered by what appear to be very fast-moving displacement waves. This probably does not bode well for Bangladesh and low-lying areas in the crooks of India or into Burma. I would think that the backlash tsunamis are actually probably going to be quite severe there. I don't think they'll be anywhere near as severe as the displacement wave that takes out the Mombasa area and goes 72 miles into Kilimanjaro. This is all from the farsight.org stuff. If we look at the remote viewing data in total and put it with the global coastal event data that we've got, we get a fairly interesting picture, because our global coastal event data showed that in some areas the ports would be dry for some period of time. So if you live in a coastal area, you may find yourself, and I'm not talking North America, let's just say, or at least not Pacific Coast North America, but let's just say we were talking some of the more northern ports or extreme southern ports in Asia or Eurasian continent. You may find that those ports go dry due to displacement issues and the water sloshing around. In the past, that is into the 17 and 1800s, there were recorded events, including Krakatoa, that caused the ports in their time to go dry for several hours. We've had indications in our global coastal event that this going dry business might last a whole day, a whole tidal cycle. It would be that big of an issue. That's why I called it the global coastal event initially, was because it wasn't going to be a global coastal flooding, because our initial stuff, as I used to just debate with George, had a lot of words, George Ure, had a lot of words relating to the lack of water, and in some cases how it would get 120 foot out from the port. In other words, the current high tide mark would be 120 feet further out into the littoral area, into your sedimentation area out there. And so it was not a good thing. All the ports would be dry. Now, in our data, it doesn't say how long that lasts. We have no temporal markers that say it's good. We have some small hints in other language that suggest it'll last as much as a day in some areas. Now, again, we also have, within the same sets that indicate the ports are going to be involved, we have data saying that some of the ports are going to be flooded. Now, we also have some of the data indicating the flooding will be quite persistent for a while. That is to say, weeks and weeks and weeks, and may in many cases be permanent in the sense of decadal. This new coastline is not going to hit everybody on the same day. There are indicators that it will take up to 2 years for some parts of the planet to actually experience the oceanic changes that are part of the global coastal event. These are all descriptions from our data. We don't have any hard evidence outside of the data to add to the descriptors, but we have all kinds of hard evidence that other people are also preparing for such a thing, such as the seed vault and all the weird inland Chinese cities that can house their entire global population, and all those cities are currently empty, yet they've got a huge building boom trying to get those done. Sorry about that. Had a technical hiccup here. And we've got other indicators that, the powers that be are well aware of what's going on and are taking preparations to house themselves. In Russia, they're digging big holes in the ground for people to hide in. China, the same. China, they're also building big cities, millions of empty dwellings inland. We've also got a situation in our area, the Anglo-American area, where the powers that be, they don't care about us, so they've just built bunkers for themselves, and they're not telling the population. They haven't put any money into a generalized, let's house the population. Rather, they built really exclusive, very rich sort of bunkers for just a few number of people. I still wonder how they're going to accommodate their guard troops and their families and etc. That's going to cause some level of discord at the very last when they have to close those doors. And if we want to look at any of the current social moves within the United States, politically, none of them make sense. There's no reason we can't go after these problems, and instead we keep having further social discord, moving us all down this direction.